In a recent video, David John Wellman made a passing reference to 19th century British philosopher W.K. Clifford's fantastic article, The Ethics of Belief. Wellman, David, if I may, quoted and praised Clifford's most famous line from that article. "It is wrong, always, everywhere, and for everyone, to believe anything upon insufficient evidence." For those of you who are unfamiliar with Clifford's article, allow me to give you the gist of it. Clifford opens with his rather famous ship owner thought experiment. A ship owner starts to have doubts that his old, worn-down ship is seaworthy. He suppresses these doubts, genuinely trusting in Providence, which has protected the ship thus far. He makes himself sincerely believe that the ship will be safe. As Clifford says, quote, "In such ways he acquired a sincere and comfortable conviction that his vessel was thoroughly safe and seaworthy. He watched her departure with a light heart and benevolent wishes, and he got his insurance money when she went down in mid-ocean and told no tales." Clifford holds the man accountable for the deaths of the crew, despite his sincere belief that the ship was seaworthy. To quote him again, "He had no right to believe on such evidence as was before him." It's not just the action of sending the ship to sea, but the very belief that she was seaworthy that is to be blamed. That is what makes Clifford's paper such an intriguing piece. He deliberately conflates moral values and epistemic values, and makes a strong case for the unanimity of the two in a short essay with a very memorable thought experiment. Clifford generalizes his point over all cases, not just ones with disastrous consequences. Excessive credulity, according to Clifford, has been the enemy of human civilization and progress. It is at this point that Clifford delivers his famous line, which David quoted earlier. "It is wrong, always, everywhere, for anyone to believe anything upon insufficient evidence." I'll call this Clifford's principle, and it's the motto for a position called Evidentialism. Clifford never quite comes out and says it, but the subtext is quite clear. Faith is actively immoral, since it involves believing in something that we are not entitled to believe in. If evidentialism is correct, then the question, should we believe in God, reduces to, is there sufficient evidence for God? While there have been a number of philosophers and theologians who have based their belief in God solely on the basis of evidence, such as John Locke, for example, by and large nowadays, evidentialism is taken as a position that is at least generally hostile towards belief in God. This is no doubt why David says of Clifford's principle that, quote, "true words were never spoken." And it's also why I was a big fan of Clifford's principle for a long time. But I have to say now, having read and thought more about evidentialism, I realize now, at least in the form that Clifford presents it, it cannot be an adequate epistemic or moral principle. And the reasons why are several. For starters, there's a fundamental logical problem with the idea that you have to base all your beliefs on sufficient evidence. Before we can justify that position, you have to answer a couple of questions. First off, what qualifies as evidence? There are actually many competing theories of evidence. If Clifford is right, we need to use evidence to decide between these various theories of evidence. But what non-question-begging evidence could we use to decide between these theories? Second question, what qualifies as sufficient evidence? How high does the bar need to be set? Does it vary from one situation to another, from one subject matter to another? Are the standards of sufficient evidence the same in, say, psychology as they are in physics? Again, what non-question-begging evidence could we use as evidence to support any given answer to these questions? Third, evidentialism is actually logically self-contradictory. What is the evidence that justifies evidentialism? There seems to be no non-question-begging answer to this question. So if we are to believe in evidentialism, we have to have a reason other than evidence itself. Another set of problems were pointed out by Peter von Inwagen in his article titled, "It is wrong, always, everywhere, and for everyone to believe anything upon insufficient evidence." He took the title of his article straight from Clifford's piece. Von Inwagen rejects evidentialism on grounds that it is too strict. He argues that if we followed Clifford's principle, then we would have to suspend judgment about almost all of our areas of inquiry. Most philosophical issues, for example, don't have compelling evidence on either side. Does this mean that we should suspend judgment on them? Exactly what evidence is there that could decide the debate over, let's say, modal fictionism versus modal realism? Or between coherentist and foundationalist epistemologies? There are informed, intelligent, rational people on both sides of these debates. Is one side or the other, or maybe even both, immoral because they believe one of these positions is correct on what must be insufficient evidence? The same is true of disputes in politics. There are informed, intelligent people who believe that candidate A is the best candidate for the job, and informed, intelligent people who believe that candidate B is the best candidate for the job. These people have seen the same evidence, by and large, yet they believe radically different things. If we apply Clifford's principle here, then it would mean that it is immoral for us to have pretty much any kind of political beliefs at all. This is also a problem in science. There are serious and major debates between scientists who look at the same evidence. Just think about the debates between, say, punctuated equilibrium and gradualism, between the Copenhagen interpretation of quantum mechanics and the many worlds hypothesis, between the myriad types of string theory that are trying to reconcile quantum physics with gravity. There are scientists in all of these debates that, tentatively at least, believe that they've got the best answer to these questions. Yet their evidence is the same as the scientists who endorse the opposite theory. If we were morally prohibited from believing their theory was right, it would be a lot harder for science to progress, since controversial ideas need champions, even in science. I could go on with other fields, economics, law, sociology, but I hope my point is made. If we suspend judgment on all of these topics, we're going to be left believing very, very little. And maybe that wouldn't be such a bad thing. But if we're going to go that route, we need to be honest with ourselves about exactly what Clifford's principle commits us to. It doesn't just allow us to dismiss the claims of religion. It compels us to dismiss things that we probably want to hold on to, including, once again, belief in Clifford's principle and evidentialism itself.